So, this month I went on a hidden London tour into a tube tunnel that the public, as far as I'm aware, has never been inside before.
The next station is Charing Cross. Change here for the Bakerloo and Northern lines and National Rail services.
So before I explain this whole tour thing, this video is going to just be me sitting here and talking. So it's going to be a little bit like the York video where I have a bunch of my photos, but I'm going to have myself talking in the background. So I should probably get into how I managed to do this tour. So I am turning the grand old age of 20 this month. In fact, by the time this video goes out, I probably will be 20 because I'm recording this video during our little break that we're taking. So I'm turning 20 this year, and as a birthday present, my mum got me tickets to the Hidden London Charing Cross Into the Overrun tour. So I should probably explain that basically people just text my mum with the most random stuff that's train related, and she sent this to me, and I thought, hey, that's kind of cool, because I'd never been on a Hidden London tour before. For those who are unaware, Hidden London is a series of tours that are organised by the London Transport Museum that take you to around various disused and like crazy abandoned tube stations. So they do tours of Aldwych, Down Street, Charing Cross on the Jubilee Line, I'll get onto that in a minute, Clapham South, there's like an air raid shelter there, Euston, just a bunch of really cool stuff. And to celebrate their 10-year anniversary, as they started doing tours in 2015, they decided to allow people, I think for the first time members of the public were allowed to go into the overrun tunnels of the Jubilee Line underneath the Strand. Now, I'm just going to quickly give a quick explainer of why these tunnels exist. So when the Jubilee Line was first proposed as the Fleet Line in the 1970s, the original plan was for it to run underneath the Strand and Fleet Street from Charing Cross all the way to Fenchurch Street. So the first phase that was approved and constructed went from Baker Street to Charing Cross. But the plan was to build the line from Charing Cross all the way through to Fenchurch Street via Aldwych, Ludgate Circus, and eventually going there. And then the plan beyond that was to extend it to the Docklands, which ended up happening in the 1990s, but of course via a different route. And well, they built that first phase, but they encountered issues with the second phase, but they future-proofed it. So basically, when they got to Charing Cross, they kept digging these tunnels all the way, almost entirely up to Aldwych, which basically, because that line was never built, it was the death knell for that station. But there's a good several hundred metres of tunnel beyond Charing Cross Jubilee Line platforms, which I believe are used as a siding thing, and to celebrate 10 years of Hidden London, they allowed members of the public to go inside, and I was one of the people that got in. You can tell it was definitely a birthday present for me because it was quite an expensive exercise. I won't say how much it was, but yeah, it was a little pricey, so definitely worthy of a birthday gift. So, the tour started. Basically, the tour reception was in the modern-day ticket hall at Charing Cross station. So the ticket hall that's right next to the main station, and that's mainly used to serve the Northern Line. As an indication of what kind of people like these tours, I was probably one of the youngest people there, which was quite fun. But so basically, they take you to the bottom of the Northern Line escalators, of which there's a wall now, but there used to be another set of escalators that go down to the Jubilee Line, and they let you through there, and they allow you to walk down these escalators. They don't have them on for you, so you have that weird feeling where, oh god, is this escalator on? No, it's not. So it's a bit bizarre, but they walk you down there, and then you're in the abandoned concourse, and it's just insane. At least for me, because I've never been down there. And they had a bunch of exhibits, like, you know, what when was this built? You know, they allowed you to walk onto the platform, so I snapped some photos, as you can see over here. They also had a projector showing a bunch of the films that was featured in, including the aforementioned Skyfall, which was great. But of course, the main crux of the tour was taking you into the overrun tunnels, and unfortunately, because the track in those tunnels is still live, because they do still use them as a fire escape route, as a siding, and as a training area, the traction in these tunnels is still live. You know, you can't go on the tracks, you're dead. So basically, spoiler alert, we didn't actually get to walk in the tunnel, but we got to go in via train. And so a train picked us up. Disappointingly, it wasn't a proper retro tube train. It was just a 1996 stock, presumably being driven manually, as of course the Jubilee Line has ATO. And you'll see in a clip I'll play in a second that it looks like it's being driven manually. But anyway, we were ushered onto the train, and before we left, we basically had a bunch of speakers that would go into individual carriages and tell us a few things. So we had some fantastic people, including, like, you know, people telling the story of how these tours were set up. And I think they host a series of videos on the LT Museum's YouTube channel. It's like a podcast kind of thing. It's quite nice, actually. I'll link that in the description. But they talked about how they set up the tours and the various things. And then you had someone explaining the history of the tunnels. And he showed pictures of a bunch of stuff that's in the Acton depot, which was really cool. But then, finally, the driver came over the PA and said, time to go. So, and from now on here, I'm going to play you pretty much the entire journey through the Overrun tunnels with a small cut in the middle. Now, spoiler alert, it's not very easy to film because you're not at the front of the train and we didn't get to actually see, you know, the siding itself. But here you are. Here is pretty much the entire journey through the Overrun tunnels.
Sorry.
So we eventually got into the end of the sidings and the train stopped, and there was still one more speaker that we had to have in the carriage, and this basically was the amount of time we spent in there, and it was the head of TfL's film division. So basically the department within TfL that organises filming. And if you're unaware, basically when a production company wants to film on the tube, they tend to film in either of two locations. If you want to film in an old tube station, you film at Aldwych because, you know, it's all retro. So if you see any kind of wartime dramas that are set in like bomb shelter kind of atmospheres, that'll be filmed at Aldwych. But if you want a modern station with like a modern atmosphere, you film at Charing Cross Jubilee Line. And she told the hilarious story, as if you have seen the film Skyfall, and if you haven't, go watch it, it's really good. There's a bit in that film, of course, where Daniel Craig and Javier Bardem playing James Bond and Silver are basically chasing around the station, which is in disguise as Temple and Embankment. And there's a bit where they slide down the escalators, and apparently it took several management levels within TfL rejected it, and it got all the way up to, I think, the managing director, and he said something like, "Oh, come on, it's James Bond, we've got to let it happen." So that was a great story. And there was a bunch of other stories of the other films they shot there, and it was really, really interesting. But there was also something really nice. On the physical information displays within the trains, they actually had them say, the next station is Charing Cross, and I'll put the clip on here. So yeah, that was really, really fun. And eventually soon, we set off back towards Charing Cross. I didn't film any of the return journey, but when we got to Charing Cross, I heard this.
Thank you.
You probably couldn't hear it too well in that clip there because I was saying my thanks to the tour guides, but this train terminates at Charing Cross is still built into the PA system of the 96s, despite the fact they haven't served passengers there since 1999. Of course, they did actually run to Charing Cross because, despite the fact they're associated with the extension, they actually entered service in, I want to say late 97 or early 98. I could be wrong. Anorax, you'll probably know that better than me, because of course I wasn't around in 1999. But yeah, that was Charing Cross into the Overrun, a Hidden London tour. Well, sort of a review and also a documentation, because I don't know if this tour's ever going to happen again. It was fantastic, and I would say definitely try and go on a Hidden London tour if you have the money and you have the time, because it's fantastic. And I'm certainly going to try and see if I can get onto another one at some point. Definitely somewhere like Aldwych or the abandoned Northern Line part at Euston. Probably not Charing Cross, because of course I've seen it already through this wonderful tour. But yeah, seriously, go do that. I probably won't make videos on that because there's a billion different videos that have been recorded. But yeah, that's how I managed to get into a tube tunnel that hasn't really seen public use. Thank you very much for watching this little video, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye everyone.